Peter Taub. I am part of the Elevate Chicago Dance Festival. I've curated the programs, including this one. And when I say that, I really say that as a shorthand, because the real story is that it's an enormous group effort, not only with colleagues like Cameron Heinze and Ginger Farley and Sean Lent of Chicago Dance Makers Forum, but also with all the artists. This project and this program today, Elevate Chicago Dance, is a huge commitment and a kind of undertaking that many artists joined us in creating. The program you're going to experience today is the first of 10 programs over the next 3 days. It's constructed as a studio showing in which artists share short works or works that they're currently developing, and you have a chance to meet them a little bit, hear a little bit about their thinking and ideas and their process in developing their works. And their participation in this format is, in a sense, a kind of sharing, a kind of participation, a kind of contribution to the overall purpose of showing what Chicago dance, contemporary dance, independent makers are developing these days. So the very first person to open the program was Sarah Zalek. She was showing an excerpt of a much longer installation and film piece on the grand staircase on the Washington Street side of the building. And right now, I'd like to ask you to join me in welcoming the choreographer and artistic director of Deeply Rooted Dance Theater, Kevin Aiega-Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey y'all, how y'all doing? Good, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? This is my time, I just had a birthday. Yeah, I love the fall, so I love being here with you guys. My name is Kevin Aiega-Jeff. I'm the artistic director of Deeply Rooted Dance Theater. And standing here with me is Joshua L. Ishman. He's on the associate artistic team. He is a dear friend who I first met as a high school student before he came to study in our program at Deeply Rooted. We are a professional dance company, yes, but more than that, we are a dance education institution. And the institution is committed to building community and using the art form to self-actualize, to develop our lives. So this young man who was a high school student dancing on stage, he kind of looked like a mosquito back in the day, is now a wonderful choreographer and a very, very dear friend. You're about to see his work, so I'm going to hand the mic to him so he can tell you what you're about to see, and then I'll share with you more later.
Thank you, sir. As he told you, my name is Joshua L. Ishman. I've been with Deeply Rooted since 2007 when I graduated high school, but I've been under this man's tutelage since 2005. And so have been very, very grateful. This is like my dance pappy, my real dad's right there. But who came all the way from DC just to see this. But the piece you're going to see today is my most current work, When Men. It is spelled with an ellipses on the end because it was choreographed with the intention of letting you add the last word or phrase to it. It was first choreographed, the first part of it was choreographed in 2015, and the second half of it was choreographed in 2016, combined to make this work that challenges the availability to let men be whole and complete. In other words, I found growing up in Gary, Indiana, in a very Christian household and things of that nature, that men were kind of deprived of feeling at all, anything beyond the surface of feelings or being able to connect with each other on a much more deeper and intimate level without it being taken as a sexual experience. And so being able to share every facet and dimension of life with one another and the fight that comes along with that. So, When Men, finish it for yourself. Thank you so much.
I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. Don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us use that power. Let us fight for a new world. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason. Let us all unite.
We are proud individuals living for the city, but the flames couldn't go much higher. We find God and religions to paint us with salvation, but no one, nobody can give you the power, the right over love, over hate. Through this silent sky that's fast becoming our minds, over fear and into freedom. All that life left dripping down the walls of a dream that cannot breathe in its harsh reality. Mass confusion, spoon-fed to the blind, serves now to define a cold society from which we'll rise and over love, and over hate. Through this silent sky that's fast becoming our mind, over fear and into freedom. You just got to hold on. You just got to hold on.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us use that power. Let us all unite.
And we'll rise over love and over hate. Through the science sky that's fast becoming our minds. And over fear and into freedom. Into freedom from which we'll rise. Over love and over hate. Through the science sky that's fast becoming our minds. Over fear and into freedom. Freedom from which we'll rise. Over love and over hate. Through the science sky that's fast becoming our minds. Over fear and into freedom. Freedom. Rain on me. Rain on me.
These are slides of a work that we're going to be presenting this December. A choreographer named Fana Shabalala, that's him. I saw his work first in South Africa in 2013 called Ndumba, and I really wanted the work to come to America. So we'll be bringing Fana here for his premiere performance, and you're looking at some photographs of some of the dancers and process that we've just completed with him this summer, and we'll be premiering it this December. Thank you. I just must thank the MacArthur Foundation for funding the creation of Ndumba. We've gotten 2 International Connections grants from the MacArthur Foundation, and I can't tell you how transformational it was for not only our work, but for my life. And so come and see us in December and come and see that beautiful work. The work was inspired by the unresolved issues that South Africa is still facing pertaining to apartheid. Okay, there were things that were not resolved in the Truth and Reconciliation Council that are now surfacing, and are kind of similar to what we're experiencing here in this country, so it's amazing how timely the work is. I want to thank Peter Taub. Thank you so much, Peter, for having us here. Cameron, for all your work. Thank you so much. I know what it took to make this happen. CDF, for your wonderful, wonderful support as well. Joshua Ishman is a CDF artist. Josh, come out one more time. Okay. All right. Love this guy. Ginger Farley, Sean, somewhere out there as well. Okay. But thank you. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer. If not, we will let you go to the next beautiful artist. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. And anyone else? We'll be at the Logan Center December 8th through the 10th. So if you'll visit Deeply Rooted Dance, you'll find our website, you can get all the information you need. And please tell people if you were moved by the work, come. Please bring people with you. We'd love to see you there. All right. Thank you all so much for sharing with us.
Hello. Hello. Yeah. Elevate. Hi, everybody. I can't cut into my 30 minutes, so I'm gonna just go. Thank you to Elevate, to Peter Taub, to Cameron, to CDF, and everybody who showed up in the middle of the day. I really appreciate that. My name is Anna Martine Whitehead, and I'm a little nervous. I don't know. So since arriving in Chicago 3 years ago, I've been growing increasingly interested in the way that our bodies live and die in the spaces around us, which makes sense. I arrived here 2 weeks before Laquan McDonald was shot to death by an employee of Chicago. And it was 2 months after Mike Brown, 2 years after Lakia Boyd, so on. I started thinking about how the state impacts our bodies and how we get bodied by the state, how we escape this repeatedly. I wrote a small book of poems about these themes last year, and in a moment I'll show some video from a recent performance inspired by these ideas of containment and fugitivity. And all the stuff that I'm talking about is embedded in larger research question around architectures of containment. So first, I would like to just address what do I mean by this term. And if you're having a hard time hearing, you can also come forward because all these seats are now empty. I don't mind if you're moving while I'm talking. Architectural theorist Samia Hani has detailed the impact that France's invention of modern warfare had on its empire-building approach to architecture. La Guerre Moderne was a shift from imagining combatants as existing in specific battlefields at specific times to an awareness that an entire civilian population could be regarded as a collection of insurgents who at any moment might be at war with the state. And the response was a containment of the population. It's no surprise then that following the invention and the international dissemination of modern warfare of La Guerre Moderne, strategically deployed for the first time in Algeria during that nation's war for independence from France, that we begin to see terms of military theater applied to any number of US urban policy. And I think most of us know this, but for example, Hoover's COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program, LBJ's war on poverty, Nixon's war on drugs, Bush's war on terror, and so on and so forth. And each of these function in the homeland as the deployment of covert tactics, as well as the normalization of basic street-level terror, such as stop and frisk. So anyway, we come back to the question, what and where is the architecture, and who is being contained by it? Which of course begs the follow-up, who is getting free and how? And you can go ahead back there, you all, and start to turn down the lights, please.
Who am I? How did I get here? I'll begin by addressing one possible narrative. Departing the coast, from the water we witness a litany of fugitive cities. Nina, Nancy, Dion, Dinah, Diana, Bessie, Alice, Ella, Etta, Billy, Minnie, Whitney, Roberta, Sarah, Aretha, Anita, Josephine, Jennifer, Jill, Lena, Tracy, Grace, Lauren, Missy, Mary, Mary, Ma, Mama.
Why do all the women I love always turn out to be runaways? And why do all the black women, except for Whitney, always begin and end their lives inside the church? And why are the church holes cut into the ceilings at such an angle that light hits the golden cross at the head of the bema and illuminates the crucifix and radiates the basilica and throws the pews into shadow? It makes a focus spot, refracting light over and over and throughout the congregation. Built in the mid-500s by King Childebert as an homage to his own decision to show mercy on Los Maños de Zaragoza in the midst of his war with Spain, the Saint-Germain-des-Prés was plundered for its treasury in the 800s and then rebuilt in 1000 as a center of wealth, scholarship, and piousness. You can see the church here in the center of the plan of the abbey. The keepers of this church, they kept an eye towards light, illusion, and watchkeeping. And the church itself functions as a proto-theater amid centuries of wars, operating through the panopticon. The panopticon, the congregation and the cross, the priest and the dais, the Savior's torture extending up into the dome. It's a trinity, a holy surveillance. Indeed, the prison de l'Abbé, which stood next door to the church for 300 years, had by 1792 become overrun with counterinsurgents. More than half of the political prisoners, clergy and aristocracy, inmate monastics, they were slaughtered in one day, including a couple dozen priests attempting to flee into the cells. Why would anyone flee into a prison? In any case, their asylum was interrupted and their bodies were mutilated. And I myself go into the church now to escape the overly policed and now gentrified neighborhood of Saint-Germain. I stand across from the cafe where Baldwin, Himes, Fanon, and Wright used to write about empire. But I fear that I am the only one like me here now. And I feel unloosed here now, partially exposed and empirically black and shadowed. I feel holy, but not in the spiritual sense.
What makes a whole except the wall it's in? The wall in the hole reveals another side, an unside or an inside. The whole, in a sense, is a presentable form, making apparent the absence of wall, where the whole always was but unavailed. Up to the point of its revelation, what is the whole's reason? That is to say, what keeps that whole around? How does a whole feel anyway, just sitting there in a wall,
But
present and
sometimes
apparent to no one but
I
itself?
might like to be a whole. Ghostly. The way a ghost can enjoy her spectership, you know, walking through walls. Soft and ambivalent to time. Fugitive. Her fugitivity stands as both an acknowledgement and a diss, a commitment to uncontainability. She's the runaway watching the paddy roller from the bushes. It's a holy surveillance, a dark surveillance from the border of the territory.
Everybody talk about heaven ain't going there. Heaven, shout out over God. You talk about heaven, everybody talk about heaven ain't going there. Shout out over God. Well, he said you got a crown, I got a crown. All God's children got a crown. Oh, when I get to heaven, gonna put on a crown. Gonna shout all over God. Talk about heaven. Heaven, everybody talk about heaven ain't going there. Heaven, gonna shout all over God. Well, they say you got a robe, I got a robe. All God's children got a robe. Yeah, when I get to heaven, gonna put on my robe. I'm gonna shout all over God.
It's also called a barricade. La barrique, as in the stone-filled barrels used in early French insurgent warfare, somehow becomes les baraques. Barracks, but now meaning something else. A barricade, the revolutionary defense mechanism against the empire. And for some reason, the word barricado is developed by the English in the late 16th century, an appropriation of the Spanish barricada, itself based on barraca, or barracks. And all of this is the future root of barracoon, English for a slave factory, which in some way is how we arrive at coon, a trans-European team effort to monosyllabically signify our nothingness. What noble beginnings. I could say more about migrancy, containment, and excess, and I will. How my body is equivalent to nothing, how it can contain all this imperial memory and forgetfulness. But for now, I'll say this. Among the empire builders and its defenders, there was etymologically an association made between a wall used in urban warfare and a fortress used to produce and contain blackness. And the barracoons across coastal Africa ballooned into castles and then prisons, always a marketplace, with titles further removing their architectures from their purpose.
Elmina Castle, St. George's Castle, Coenradsburg, Metal Cross, St. James, Lightsome Hyde, Agility, Apollonia, Prinzenstein, Bottenstein, Groot Friedrichsburg, Santo Antonio, Patience, Good Hope. Anybody has questions or feedback, this is very much a work in progress, so I welcome any thoughts. Or you can talk to me later. Yeah.
I can't articulate a question right now, but are you going to be around over the weekend?
Yeah, I'll be around.
Questions are going to come off, I think.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'll be around through Elevate, I'll be around on stage in a second. And I'll be at the Dorchester Place show on Saturday, thank you. And I'll be around throughout. Yeah. Yeah.
Where are you in your process of research and moving forward from here?
I'm trying to find opportunities to actually go into the archives because I feel like there's I would really like to go back to France, actually. There's so much history there, both they have a whole collection of archives about their colonies and their former colonies, but also it's just apparent history too, in terms of the way that they've borrowed and built and used the wealth of their archives. Excuse me. So I hope to go back there and continue some of this research. And I'm in the very early stages of doing movement research too. So, yeah.
Are you also an educator, or are you just engaging in process with others?
Yeah. Yes, I am. I teach at the School of the Art Institute, and I am also, yes, very much interested. I also work with the Prison Neighborhood Arts Project, which teaches at Stateville Prison. So I teach dance there, and also anywhere. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Hello, I'm Lynn Hickson, director of Every House Has a Door.
I am Matthew Gulish, the dramaturg and writer.
Matthew and I founded this company in 2008 to convene diverse, intergenerational, project-specific teams of collaborators and specialists. We have created and presented 8 works. As we approach our first 10 years of existence, we are preparing a performance commission for the Art Institute of Chicago, and that's what we're going to show you some of that material today. Our performance, This Is Not a Dream, will situate alongside the exhibition commemorating the centennial of the 1917 Russian Revolution. We will present it in Fullerton Hall on December 2nd and 3rd.
We want to keep this introduction brief because we have a sequence to show you roughly 25 minutes in length, and because our work includes a fair amount of dramaturgical context as direct audience address within the presentation. This performance offers a loose collection of events from 1917 and proceeds from a question. Can we approach history not as chronology, but as geology, not a timeline of cause and consequence, but a portrait that allows us to recognize the synchronization of different strata contained within, not a model, but a moment, a stacked up vision of the time as a means of knowing it. Iconography, iconoclasm, an instance of irreplaceable currency.
A montage of attractions and energies of a succession of generations. 100 years have passed. This is not a dream.
In the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas, Gertrude Stein wrote about the year 1917. In these pictures, Pablo Picasso first emphasized the way of building in Spanish villages, the line of the houses not following the landscape, but cutting across and into the landscape, becoming undistinguishable in the landscape by cutting across the landscape. It was the principle of the camouflage of the guns and the ships in the war. The first year of the war, Picasso and Eve, with whom he was living then, Gertrude Stein and myself, were walking down the Boulevard Rapet a cold winter evening. There is nothing in the world colder than the Rapet on a cold winter evening. We used to call it the retreat from Moscow. All of a sudden, down the street came some big cannon, the first any of us had seen painted, that is camouflaged. Pablo stopped. He was spellbound. C'est nous qui avons fait ça, he said. It is we that have created that, he said. And he was right. He had. Social dances popular at the time were the foxtrot and the one-step traveling its distinctive rectangular pattern across the dance floor. In 1917, Buster Keaton made his first silent film appearance. He directed and starred in The Rough House. A delivery boy flirts with Mrs. Ruff, causing a fight to break out with the house cook who chases him through the house. Russian director Dziga Vertov's documentary Enthusiasm depicts the development of labor in Ukraine. Coal miners perform a series of industrial dances, training them in axing in constrained spaces and carrying heaps of coal. Taylorist drills derived from American theorist Frederick Taylor's ideas of synthesized workflow. The revolution requires a new kind of labor, a new body, a new human. The hyper-efficient movements of the silent film comedians became an inspiration for the Bolsheviks. Gorky wrote how in a London music hall, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin laughed easily and infectiously on watching the clowns in vaudeville acts, but he was only mildly interested in the rest. He watched with special interest as workers from British Columbia felled trees. The small stage represented a lumber yard, and in front, two hefty fellows within a minute chopped down a tree of about 1 meter circumference. Years later, in his autobiography, Buster Keaton wrote, "I was so successful as a child performer that it occurred to no one to ask me if there was something else I would like to do when I grew up. If someone had asked me, I would have answered, civil engineer."
On December 27, 1917, in New York City, scholar, writer, and activist William Edward Burghardt Du Bois addressed the 9th Annual Convention of the Intercollegiate Socialist Society with a speech titled "The Problem of Problems." One of the most prominent leaders in the civil rights struggle in the United States in the first half of the 20th century, Du Bois had co-founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People in 1909. As editor of The Crisis, the NAACP magazine, he led protests for voting rights and against lynchings and the system of legal segregation known as Jim Crow. While he questioned the United States' ability to save the world for democracy with a clear conscience as long as the country maintained racist policies at home, Dr. Du Bois supported the decision to enter the World War. He had resigned from the Socialist Party, critical its failure to contend with racism and to abandon its traditional policy that there was nothing special about race questions, that they were simply a part of the general problem of the working class. The backdrop of his 1917 speech was a violent racial conflict in Houston, which I will attempt to explain. The desegregation of the United States Armed Services did not begin until 1948. In 1917, the 3rd Battalion of the 24th Infantry Regiment of the Army was made up entirely of African American soldiers. Deployed to Houston's Camp Logan, they encountered the segregated streetcars of Jim Crow, Texas, and white co-workers who demanded separate tanks of drinking water. On August 23rd, a rumor reached the camp that Houston police had killed Corporal Charles Baltimore when he interfered with the detention and interrogation of a black woman. In fact, Baltimore had been beaten but survived. Reacting to rumors of a white mob, 156 black troops procured weapons and marched through Houston. Local whites had armed themselves, and a violent confrontation claimed the lives of 4 soldiers and 15 local residents, wounding many more. After the death of a National Guardsman whom the troops had mistaken for a policeman, the leader of the gang of soldiers, Sergeant Vida Henry, committed suicide. In November, the largest court-martial in U.S. military history convened at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio to try 63 of the soldiers. 41 were imprisoned for life, and 13 were executed by hanging on December 11th. Now, it's Thursday, December 27th, 1917. 2 weeks and 2 days later, W.E.B. Du Bois concludes his speech. Today, pacifists think war a horrible thing. But yesterday, when war was confined to the Belgian Congo, to the headwaters of the Amazon, to South Africa and parts of India and the South Seas, it was not war. It was simply a method of carrying civilization onto the natives, and there were not national conventions on the subject. In the peace proposals that are now being made continually, the future of the disfranchised Indians of the Eastern and Western Hemisphere and the disfranchisement of the Negroes in the United States has not only no important part, but practically no thought. What you are asking for is a peace among white folk. with the inevitable result that they will have more leisure and inclination to continue their despoiling of yellow, red, brown, and black folk. Revolution is discussed, but it is the successful revolution of white folk, and not the unsuccessful revolution of black soldiers in Texas. You do not stop to consider whether the Russian peasant had any more to endure than the black soldiers of the 24th Infantry, but you do consider, and consider with the utmost care, that the black soldiers' cause was lost before they took arms, and that for that reason it can be easily forgotten. Thus, in every question that you discuss, and in many other great social questions which you might discuss, frankness and honesty on your part is almost impossible because of the fact that the nation is guilty of continual injustice toward 1/10 of its own citizenship, and that the injustice is deliberate as long as they refuse to investigate it or discuss it, and because if today you saw the righteous and honest solution, you would be frankly unwilling to receive it, unwilling to carry it out, since you would not want to live in a world where Negroes were treated as men. Under such circumstances, you must remember that the integrity of your own souls and minds is at stake. You cannot thus play with the human problem and not spoil your own capacity for reason. You must face the fact that these human beings cannot always remain in their present relation to world movements. I once suggested in the Crisis magazine a method for solving this problem, which was received with a certain gasp of horror. Yet, I venture to suggest it again. I said that every white family in the United States might choose a person of Negro descent, invite him to their home, entertain him, and then through some quick and painless method kill him. And in that way, in a single day, we would be rid of 12 million people who are today giving us so much concern, or rather, so little concern. Remember that as ghastly as a proposal of this sort appears, it appears that it is a good deal better than forcing these Negroes into slums and ghettos and letting them die slowly by a high death rate. It is a good deal better than forcing them to the lowest wages and letting them die of inanition. And it is even better than presenting them with a program of life and education, which includes universal and continual insult with absolutely no hope of normal citizenship in modern civilization. And finally, it is the only one decent alternative to treating them as men.